place out there in Fredericksburg, and it sure doesn't warm my soul. The only plan on my itinerary to let all the BS go. The Texas Hill Country, it's the only drug I need. And I gave up the bottle well a few years ago. Sobriety's been good to me, but sometimes I still get unwound. The Central Texas rain's the strongest drink around. Next on the curve and where I first got clean, I say hello to some of my friends. I might stop by the Guadalupe Dam, jump in that river for little plans. I can't forget about Luke and Bob. I packed my guitar this time. The picker circle starts right at 3, and playing with them guys gets me high. The Texas Hill Country, it's the only drug I need. And I gave up the bottle well a few years ago. Sobriety's been good to me, but sometimes I still get unwound. The Central Texas rain's the strongest drink around. The Central Texas rain's the strongest drink I found.
Live from Houston, Texas, this is Big Ideas, Small Business with your hosts, Brian Gendron and Shavonnah Robert Schreiber. And now, the music of Max Flinn.
Starting to feel a little crazy again. I think it's time I start to pack my things. The city life has really got me down.
Welcome to Big Ideas, Small Business. This is a show by business owners, for business owners, entrepreneurs, side hustlers. We're here to get you in business and help you stay in business. I'm your host, Brian Gendron, joined always by Shavonnah Robert Schreiber. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing great today. Thanks for asking.
I know it's been a great day. I think the weather is helping. I feel like, my response is living the dream. My standard response. And anytime the weather is really great, I really double down on that. So yeah, living the dream today. Doing great.
I'm feeling it. And have a very timely topic today. We're going to be talking about annual strategic planning.
Yes.
Strategic planning 101.
That's right. So, when we were, as many people who listen to us may know, we get together and we come up with topics that, one, we think are beneficial to us as small business owners, but then also topics that either because of things we've seen in the news or conversations we've had with other business owners we think are relevant. And now here we are mid-November, and I have been hearing nothing but people talking about 2021. So whenever you're at the end of the year and you're talking about the next year, strategic planning is one of those things that comes up. And actually, I mentioned this to you. Actually, I have found that a lot of people get strategic planning and business planning confused. So some people think, well, I have a business plan. So what's with this strategic or strat plan business that you're talking about? I've already done that, right? When I started my business, I already did that. And really, I think that's a good place to level set. So, your business plan, that really is that, that's that initial, when you start your business, that focuses on, maybe that 1 year, what am I doing in the beginning of this business venture that I've endeavored? And then your strategic plan is a bit more dynamic. It's more of a roadmap. So you're thinking a bit further out, 3 to 5 years. And so you set the strategy, and then each year, perhaps, you're updating your business plan so it can match with the strategy. So that's the way I think about it. Thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah. So strategic plan is the larger vision. Absolutely needs to be in consideration when you're doing your annual or quarterly business planning. And this is such a unique year to be talking about planning, because I doubt many people figured out that there was going to be a pandemic and was going to have such an impact on basically every small business across our country and across the world in some ways. So how do you account for that? And how do you think about those types of things that could come up and incorporate that in your plan? So if there's something outside of your business's control that's going to deviate you from the plan in potentially a big way, have you factored that in like contingency plans, for example? So
yeah, it's so interesting. I listened to a podcast this morning. I think I've told you about my study of Optimize Me. People should check that out. It's really good. So I'm in Optimize coach training right now. And the module I listened to today, he repeated this philosophy, I guess, that he calls WHOOP. So when you WHOOP something, it's you figure out your why, you think about your obstacles, and then you develop a plan to overcome those obstacles. And one of the things he says is that most people, especially those dreamy entrepreneur types like us, think only of the goal that they're going to achieve. So then when something does come up, like a pandemic or a natural disaster or a flood in your building, you lose staff members, whatever it is, people are unprepared. And then that takes them further off of their roadmap because they just hadn't thought about it. So this notion of the WHOOP is something I've been using. So like you said, okay, what is my plan? But then also, what are the potential obstacles? And then how can I build some sort of a contingency around that? Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to identify every single obstacle that is possible. However, I really do think with each strange thing that happens, you add that to your arsenal, right? So you're like, okay, natural disaster happens. Okay, so now for the next year, when you're doing this process, you think about, okay, in the event of a natural disaster, then this. So I think hopefully we won't have to use it, but I do think that businesses will be thinking about pandemic-like contingency plans going forward when they're doing strategy planning, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And we're in a unique situation, Shavonnah, being here in Houston. We've experienced, since we've started our businesses, or at least I have, the impact of a major natural disaster being, in our case, is Hurricane Harvey, very disruptive to business and life here in the city. Yes. And then, of course, now, in the wake of the pandemic, so you collect these experiences and call it wisdom. And by the way, people in front of us who started businesses long before us carry this wisdom. They know these things. So, if nothing else, as you're going through strategic planning, if possible, get yourself a coach or mentors that can help advise you. Or if you're lucky enough to have assembled a board, make sure that they're reviewing this and they're looking for those types of things, because they've already blazed these paths, and you shouldn't have to feel like a pioneer blazing them on your own.
That's right. Well, and I say, even if you don't have a coach already established or a board already established, make one starting now. Right. So even if, for some of our listeners, this may be the first time that they've really thought about, okay, I'm going to do a strategic plan. So they may be thinking, okay, well, what do I even need to do? So I think that this would be a great opportunity to, like I said, if you don't already have a mentor or a board of directors established, to reach out to a few people and say, hey, I'm doing this for the first time. You've clearly done this or something like this because you're successful at your business pursuit. Do you have, a time to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, if they can give it, to just hear what I'm thinking and let me talk through it, and then poke holes, right? Or tell me the things I'm not seeing so I can be sure that I plan for them. So I'd say even if you don't have one, you should start one now.
Absolutely. And people would be honored to help you with that, so as long as they have the time. Sure. And certainly oftentimes we'll find the time to help you. Just in your ask, make sure that you're polite and you're respectful. You're showing that you're respectful of their time, that you can do it on their time. And you'd be surprised that you turn into something that you'd think would be a no into yes. And I've actually been able to work with some pretty amazing people in mentorship for this very thing. So, aim high. If there's somebody that you really look up to, whether it's in your industry or an adjacent industry, or just somebody that you respect, try to reach out to them and explain to them what you're doing, and you'd be shocked that you probably get a yes.
Oh, I would say I'd be willing to bet if I were a betting woman, I would say probably the odds are in your favor. Probably 80% of the time, people will say yes because I think innately humans want to help each other. Like I just think that's part of who we are, especially when it's the ask is something that we are expert in or that we have some level of expertise in. I think people like that. And I mean, all I would say is just to be sure to add to what you said, Brian, is that you come prepared. So one of the things that I think about, like, okay, well, if you've never done a strategic plan before and you're thinking about this for the first time, I prepared a few things that we could talk about that I think would be helpful just to get your momentum going. So then you can do a bit of groundwork before you have those conversations, whether you have a mentor already established or you're going to be reaching out to one. So number one, take some time looking at the current business environment in your industry. So I think, if you watch the news or listen to any media, surprise, surprise, this is a pandemic, right? So we know that. So we know that the economy is not super awesome, but I do think that there are parts of our economy that haven't been as negatively impacted, that might be doing okay. Or there are parts that are starting to come back online a bit more quickly than others. So for your particular industry, I think it's important to do that type of assessment. Of course, the general macro assessment, but then also a micro. What's happening in your industry? And then how does your company play a part in that? So if you think about what's happening in your particular industry and you happen to have something that's a competitive advantage or a big gap, maybe you have this big, huge gap as it relates to your particular industry right now, then that is going to, I hope, inform the trajectory of your planning, or if you have an advantage. So I would start there, like what's happening macro level, you pretty much already know that. Then what's happening at that micro level, and start there. Start there with formulating and pulling together those pieces for then how does that impact your business and the plan that you have for the year ahead.
Yeah, I think we're building out a nice strategy for somebody who is, like you mentioned in the beginning, starting from scratch with maybe this is their first strategic plan, or if they've done it in the past and it hasn't gone well. And I can claim that that's happened to me. And so you go from this macro, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the economy, internationally, locally, and then you zoom in a little bit further and look at specifically what's happening in my industry. Where can I differentiate and really find my space that might be able to give me, like you said, a competitive advantage or an opportunity in the industry? And then perhaps, and maybe you're going a different direction, but perhaps you look at within your own team and look at how you can develop and grow. If you have certain parts that like you mentioned earlier, could fit into helping you develop out perhaps this strategy, this specific strategy into going into a competitive advantage, or if there's people within your team that you can bring up in other areas, what does that look like in the coming year? So external to internal.
Yeah, I think and then that leads me to think about the external. So we've been doing this here at SNR Creative, and that's here we've made a very concerted effort around strategic partnerships. So as we look out ahead and we look to what's happening, what we think may be happening and how we're going to play in our marketing communication space in 2021, what we've been doing is thinking, okay, what other agencies some are our size, some are ginormous as compared to us, that could we reach out to? Could we start to build a relationship and maybe see if we can help each other? So just like I mentioned, not only do we sometimes have hopefully those competitive advantages, but we have gaps. So how can we work together to help fill the gaps and streamline processes and work together? So I think that this strategic planning, definitely internal is where it has to start. But then I think this is something I don't know, Brian, if all business owners think about, but go beyond internal and think about those partnerships. What are those key partnerships that either you have and you just not really maybe leverage, or you don't have that you can develop? I think this is a good time for that.
Yeah, you actually helped me realize that I skipped one of my favorite steps. So before you even go internal, you go from globally what's going on locally in your market, and then of course what's going on in your industry. What is going on in complementary businesses and industries where you can develop business relationships? And I can't believe I skipped that. So thank you.
You laid it up for me. You gave me a nice little layup. So That's
so a great example, or a couple of examples I have from my personal business is, we found out that we have a niche as far as helping businesses move technology when they're moving offices, when they're relocating their business. And so we developed relationships with internet carriers who would who would be providing new internet to their new building, and moving companies that would be, involved in the physical move, and those types of partners outside of our industry that would help us either get new leads or become a part of a whole solution that we could bring these customers. So, and then in my wife's business, for example, because I work and help her quite a bit with business development there. She works with a dentist that does a certain operation that leads itself to need chiropractic care. She's a chiropractor. And so that alignment is just thinking a little bit outside of the box where you can get strategic partnerships that aren't competitive. Because you mentioned in your industry, well, if we can find those can be helpful too, especially if they have complementary, skill sets. But completely outside of your industry is a great place to look and absolutely put that into your strategic plan for growth.
Yeah, I love that outside your industry completely, like you said, the complementary. That's a great idea. And that's, when I think about, I guess I'm strange in this way that I don't bristle at all in competition. I actually learned from a person that I used to work in an organization that they led. They called it co-opetition. And I've talked about that before. Where sometimes we compete, but then sometimes we cooperate and we work together and we partner. But yeah, that's a good point to think about those ecosystems of complementary services that you can be a part of. And you know what else? I think that from a strategic planning standpoint, like I said, I think this is an area that not many people think about, especially small business owners, because you have so many other things to think about. We have so many other things to think about that we don't always have that space, that mental space and bandwidth to step back and say, okay, let me brainstorm a bit and think through what are some creative solutions and partnerships that maybe there's a problem that we keep running into in our industry. And by partnering with someone else outside of our industry, like you mentioned, with these sort of ecosystems of complementary services, we can end up with the solution to solve that problem. I mean, that's like, I'm thinking about, if someone's moving their office and they have all of this technology that needs to not only move, but needs to go offline for a short amount of time as possible, and then be brought back up online with minimal disruptions. That is a delicate thing, as I'm sure you know well more than I do. But yeah, I just think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's one thing. You made me think of one other quick thing about the strategic planning, because you mentioned that you almost have to step outside of your day to day, right? So so maybe the best way to do this is to get yourself to a quiet place. If you're blessed enough here in Texas, people have ranches, or you know people that have ranches. Get out into the country, get out of the city. Bring some of your strategic executives or folks that are important in your team. Bring that coach or that mentor we talked about earlier, and then do some exercises too to kind of get yourself warmed up that allow you to get into the right mind space and step away from the business. It's cliche, but work on the business, not in the business. And so you need to give yourself that space and that time to do that. One other quick thing I was going to talk about too is supply chain type strategies, right? Yeah. So it's big in our industry. We do a lot of product resale. So we buy from distribution. And this is true in a lot of industries, or even manufacturers that are working with different suppliers, and figure out, okay, maybe your strategic sourcing was or less strategic, and you had lots of partners. Could you streamline that, work with one partner and say, you rearrange your contracts potentially and say, we're going to do all of our this business through you. Can we get additional discounts? Can we get additional support and air coverage, marketing dollars? What might that look like in the coming year? And so that's another way to look at it, to work with your supply chain and strategic sourcing partners.
I agree with that from a streamlining the supply chain. So we read a book here at SNR Creative called Upstream, and it's like one of my favorite things. So we made it a verb. We called it, we're upstreaming things all the time. And I really think that idea of taking a look at every part of your business, the supply chains, the workflows, and figuring out what needs to stop, start, continue. That's a part of the strategic plan. And not only what needs to stop, start, and continue, but with whom do you need to partner with to make these things happen. So I think that streamlining of your supply chain can be huge. And I honestly think that that's one of those things that if I were a betting woman, 80% of the time, if you approach a supplier with a proposal like that, they're going to say, okay. I mean, what's the downside? I mean, I think there'll be few instances where there will be a circumstance that won't allow that to move forward. But in most cases, people will probably say, okay, or it's worth the try for a quarter or 2 quarters or, some term to see if it can work. So yeah, I think that's so that saves money, that saves time. And then that also is going to lead to some, hopefully, higher levels of customer delight, right? So if you're streamlining things, hopefully downstream, your customers will start to feel that.
Yeah, you mentioned another great thing to be looking at in your strategic planning is where can you save or find efficiencies in your processes and operations, right? So where maybe do you have some software that could be maybe updated or changed that fits better into your stack to make things more operational? Where can you take out the opportunity for mistakes? So human errors is something we talk about a lot in cybersecurity. That's where your risks are. So if you can take out in anywhere in your process where there might be human error, that's good we like that from a cybersecurity standpoint, and you like that as a business owner because things are streamlined, less room for error and mistakes. So and then are you using the right software? People don't take enough time to go say, hey, I'm going to evaluate 2 other CRMs. I'm going to work the process and just see, are we in the right place? Are we invested in the right space? Because sometimes you'd be shocked how much money you can save and how easy, although it's always going to be a pain to switch, how a lot of these companies make it very as easy as possible for you to switch. So these are other things to be thinking about from an ops side, especially from software. Maybe I'm thinking about it tech. Maybe you can even get into more personnel. But I
think that those are the big 3, right? So you think when you're thinking about the strategic plan and you're doing your SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on operations, technology, workflow, which falls into operations, and then also personnel. And I think the fear is that sometimes when people hear that, they think, oh, that means you're cutting. Not necessarily. Maybe it's restructuring. Maybe it's reassigning. Maybe it's adding on new jobs or new roles or new responsibilities for the team that you have, but deploying that team in a different way. So I think that those are the areas, those 3 big areas, personnel, technology, and operations, should all be on the table. And actually, like you said, lots of times the complaint is, well, it'd be great to do this, but I don't have time. And I actually think that is one of the unintended positive consequences of this pandemic, is that we all probably had a little bit more time than we needed to or were used to having at some point over the last 8 months, right? And so it's during those down times when you're like, okay, as people are figuring things out, trying to figure things out, well, if you have a whole day free now because you're not driving back and forth to meetings or you lost a customer, whatever, that's that time that you can fill with something like this, with that strategic planning to really sort of future cast, okay, where am I going in the next 3 years? And, and I'll say, I also think it's important to not be afraid to think about that. Like, where am I going to be in the next 3 years? And this is the work in the business, on the business sort of conversation, where sometimes it's like, well, this is so stressful in this very moment. I feel like if I take my eye off this ball, it would be irresponsible. I would argue and say, not so. And, this is a time for you to cast your vision. And then that business plan, like we talked about at the start, is what you will use and refer to calibrate against the larger strategic plan. And you have some flexibility, but you should definitely cast a vision for sure, no matter what 2020 has been and no matter what has happened for the future, I think.
I love the word calibrate to your business plan. That's perfect. Because I was going to get into the next thing, which is, okay, so you've gone through all of these factors that you mentioned. Now, how do you get this down into action? What is the takeaway at the end of this? And how do you communicate it across your team? And then how do you track it? So let's get to this side of the strategic planning.
Yeah, so, interestingly, we did a retreat. SNR Creative did a retreat in September. It was very socially distanced and safe. And we got off-site. We had one of our partners. They have a huge place. And since everyone was at home because of COVID, I think they have like 10,000 square feet or something crazy. And so like 10 people, we had, 10,000 square feet. So it was great. But out of that, we created this little document. It's a team charter, but in there, we went through our mission and vision and values again. We went through our team agreements again. We talked about ground rules. We talked about the type of team we want to become and what we needed to do in order to accomplish that. And then everyone on the team got a buddy. So they got this buddy that they were assigned to make some commitments about what they were going to do, what was their part to help us accomplish this larger goal. So in a way, our charter was like our strategic plan, right? More of a cultural strategic plan. And then their individual commitments were like their mini business plans, right? All working up toward what we said we were going to do as a team. And, I think that it was as simple as that. We did have a facilitator come in to work with us, but it was getting it down on paper. Well, first on a whiteboard, right? And in conversation, and then actually getting it down on paper. And then really, I think the onus fell on me as the leader of this team to make sure that it moved forward by the excitement that I built around it. So I have been talking about SNR Creative 2.0. So that's our thing. We're upstreaming and we're in 2.0. I've been talking about it. I talked about it for probably 2 months before we even had the retreat. I got stickers made. We got t-shirts made. We're all in on 2.0. We had this sort of internal marketing campaign. And from the leadership standpoint, I took it as, and I take it as my responsibility to keep this top of mind. So in fact, when we have our team meetings now on Fridays, that's always a slide. So we look at a slide every week on mission, vision, agreements every week. And I say, I'm going to leave it in here for as long as I feel like it needs to be there. But I really think it's the operational piece of it is getting it on paper. So when you go off to the ranch or your friend's ranch or wherever you get away, or even, to the park, a day like today, you can just go to the park, to the Arboretum, wherever, and you start writing these things down. I think that is, first you brainstorm, you think about it, then you start writing things down, capture those ideas, and then flesh them out and make it an official document. And we have some resources that I know we're going to share in the show notes, places you can go to get templates and things like that. But you can also make a very simple strategic plan. This is where I am. These are the opportunities. I've looked at technology, personnel, and operation. Here's where I see we've done a SWOT against those areas. This is what is the outcome, and now this is our plan. And that's all it has to be, right? It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that, I don't think.
That's wonderful. I like the charter. Sounds so official. Right? Yeah, and I've always admired your ability to build and grow teams, and so that thank you for walking us through that process. I think that the thing that that people forget about, and you're a marketing and branding person, as am I, is to be able to sell your vision, sell your strategic plan. It's a marketing effort internally. So, and it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. Shavonnah takes it further because that's just who she is. And she, shirts and hats but even just as simple as a name and then having it that first slide, SNR Creative 2.0 is impactful. And it's just a reminder. And and here's the cool part. If you get off site, and even if it's at the park, like Shavonnah said, on a beautiful day, by just flashing that brand up there, you bring them back to that moment. And usually it's an enjoyable experience if it's done well. And it brings them back to, hey, why are we all here? Mm-hmm. What did we agree to do? And it really just brings them together. And the increment of a year is probably about the time when you'd want to rebrand, or maybe you can stretch it for 2 years if you got positive impact. But that's great, and that's something to think about. And if you're a large enough company, you may want to take some of your external resources that are usually dedicated to external marketing and bring those within to really sell the strategic plan into the business.
Yeah. I mean, and I really think it's just like anything else in business. It's once you say, okay, I need a strategic plan. Okay, I've started to pull together my ideas. I've marshaled some resources as far as whether it's trainers or coaches or mentors to help me. I've put it down on paper. I now can operationalize it. Now you do it. I think that's the other thing, right? Like it's do what you said you were going to do. And if you are doing it, if I'm doing that as a leader of an organization, then that has this trickle down effect, right? And I mean, really, I think that it's easier to see change than you think if you will just take the first step and just every day, like, okay, so today's the day I'm going to look at my team charter. I'm going to review it. I'm going to think I'm going to say 2.0. I'm going to think about it. And today I'll inch a little bit closer toward whatever that vision is that I cast for where we're going as an organization. So you just got to do it.
Yeah. And you guys did it right. Like we talked about bringing in somebody who's, you said a third party or a moderator is great because then it takes it away from you. You're still going to lead. There's no question, but
Sure.
it allows somebody from an outside perspective to help formulate how you're going to lead and then get agreement and buy-in from you and as well as the people that are going to be following or your team. I shouldn't, maybe following is not the right word, but then now you've got this healthy way forward and a commitment that you've created to execute.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about this strategic planning in general because it's whiteboard type activities, right? So you get a chance to literally, no matter what happened, if you wanted to, you could change the entire thing, whatever it is that you're doing. If you wanted to, you could say, you know what, we have 10 things we've been doing, and we're only going to do one of those things after today, and we're going to create 9 new or 3 new things that we're going to do and move forward on. So to me, it's a growth opportunity because even if there are things that didn't work, there is growth in looking at those with a close eye and figuring out a new plan. And then also if you bring, like I said, whether it's your team or a mentor or coach into it, there's energy that builds, like literal energy that builds just in the exercise of vision casting. And then you get to take that energy with you as you go forth and operationalize whatever you come up with in your strategic plan.
Wonderful. Any other closing remarks from strategic plan? I'm excited. I want to see that charter next time I'm in your office.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that I guess my one thing I will say is no matter what your mind will tell you, I don't have time. You will look at your bank account and it may tell you, oh, I don't have time. I can't afford to bring somebody in. All of the things. I mean, there are a million reasons why you'll tell yourself that you don't have time or the resources to do it. And I say, you can do it. You may have to get really creative. You'd be surprised who will come and help you. There are places that, SBDC, for example, where both you and I are heavily involved. You reach out to them. Maybe someone can help you in a virtual sort of facilitation format. Maybe it would be free. I just think that there's opportunity to do it. And I feel like if you really are committed to spending this time and it's an investment. Even if you don't pay for anything, it's an investment, a time investment, mental investment in your business. I know it'll pay dividends. So I guess my parting remark would be, whether it's a small strat plan or it's a multi-year, multi-level with a charter and whatever strat plan, just do one. Just take that time and let this be the year that you say, you know what, I'm going to make this a part of my business practice. And then let us know how it goes, right? I mean, and also reach out to us for help. If you want help or resources, templates, etc. I mean, we can provide that. Those are things that we can help with too. So yeah, just do it. Like Nike. That's my parting thought. Just do it. Just do it. Yeah, it's an investment is a good way to put it. The way it's kind of cart before the horse, maybe perhaps. But if you think about it, if you did strategic planning, you would have the time to do strategic planning. You would have created that time through the things we talked about, improving operations, improving personnel, all those things. So I like that. I'm going to write that down. If you did strategic planning, you'd have time to do strategic planning. That's right.
Yeah. So this is great topic. Get out there. If you have not yet got this on your calendar, you got a little bit of time before the end of the year. And by the way, I've done these at the very beginning of the year too, as a way to get energy going after the holidays. So my strategic planning when I had a large team was first week of January. Let's get off and get moving in the same direction. Right or wrong, that's how we did it. And that's
I think that's great. I think whether it's the as a leader, you plan this like at this part of the year and you're thinking about it and you just do your planning, and then in the beginning of the year you bring your team in on it. I think that works. I think if you have the time to do it with the team now, I really do think whether it's now or later, the doing it is where you'll see the results.
Yeah, and like anything for me anyway, I put it on the calendar. It gives me something to work towards, and then you make it happen. So, guys, thanks for joining us today. Please go out and listen to all of our past episodes. BISBmedia.com. BISBmedia.com is where you can find it. You can also get us on social media at BISB Show. Big Ideas Small Business, BISB Show. It's been a great time talking to you, Shavonnah.
Always fun.
All right. I've been Brian Gendron with Shavonnah Robert Schreiber. Now you guys get out there and close some business.
Central Texas rain's the strongest drink I found.
Thank you for listening to Big Ideas Small Business. Follow us at BISB Media and visit our website at www.bisbmedia.com.